Hello, horror fans, and welcome to the Script to Scream podcast, where we delve into the spine tingling world of horror cinema. Each week, we look at the scariest scenes, unmask the deeper meanings behind your favourite horror films, and explore the psychology of fear that keeps us coming back for more.
From script analysis to scene breakdowns, we'll be dissecting your favorite horror movies to see just what makes them tick. So, whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or just starting to explore the genre, join us as we unravel the spine tingling stories that haunt the silver screen.
I'm Will.
And I'm Lee.
So, Lee, my good man, good to see you again, buddy. How's things? What's been on your undoubtedly gruesome watch list this week?
Well, I had something of a reconnect with nature this weekend in that I enjoyed a double bill of creature features in 2019's Crawl and 2016's The Shallows. And if nothing else, both serve to remind me of just why I don't like water and how glad I am that the only dangerous local wildlife I have to contend with here in England are chavs and my neighbour's chihuahua.
Yeah, man, nothing more vicious in nature than a chihuahua. There's no
True
doubt
that.
about that. Also, judging by your movie watching trends, I can see why you don't appreciate the ocean.
Yeah, man. I mean, call it I think thalassophobia or just common sense, but few things in life fill me with dread like the open ocean.
Did Jaws have a bit of an impact on you as a kid, Lee?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even have a bubble bath after watching that movie for the first time. Anything deeper than a puddle that I couldn't see the bottom of was a no go for sure. I don't know how Australians do it. I swear down.
Oh, dude. Well, you're missing out. You're missing out. I mean, so this week I went and saw Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme, which was a real delight. I don't know if you like Wes Anderson movies, but I find them absolutely wonderful.
Not they're not high on my list of things to watch.
I can imagine. I can just, they're
It's
not
it, it's kind of for me. It's kind of Robert Eggers syndrome. It's like I get that they're great. I get that he's a very accomplished director and very talented and makes great films, but it's just not my cup of tea.
it's not your bag. Not your bag. Yeah, that's fair enough. I also watched the director's cut of Napoleon, which I thought looked, really stunning, but honestly, like left me a touch flat. And I saw Justin Kurzel's The Order, which I thought was a pretty damn good crime thriller, to be honest. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Nice, nice. So, what is strapped on the table for dissection this week, my man?
Well, this weekly, it's a script to scream first. So, yes, we are taking our first plunge into the alien landscape of streaming television as we take an in depth look at the season pilot of the highly regarded From.
Probably my favorite ongoing show and easily one of, if not the best horror show out there right now.
So yeah, I wasn't overly familiar with this one. And I'll freely admit, I mean, most of my knowledge about this series prior to the episode was you constantly banging on about how amazing it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've switched a lot of people onto this show, and so far, not one of them has failed to love it. So hopefully, I'll be able to add you to that list too.
Well, we'll see, dude. We'll see. Yeah, I'll let you know my thoughts in the breakdown. But before we get into it, what made you choose this particular show for the section?
Okay, well, first off, I thought it'd be really interesting to look at how a streaming show is structured. I mean, I know you and I have studied classic syndicated shows like The X-Files, but I was interested to see if any sort of remnants of that four-act structure remain on a streamer where there's no need for ad breaks or anything like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm really interested to see that too. So that's a real good shout.
Awesome. Secondly, From, it's a really awkward title as well. Yeah. From has a genius concept that plays into its relatively low budget roots and allows for a simple and constant reinvention as the story requires. Kind of like how an idea is good when you read it and you go, man, I really wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like having watched the first episode of this show, I can confirm I do wish that that I had thought of this. Is there anything else that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons horror doesn't always translate well to TV is that the fear of death, one of the primal themes of horror, is always somewhat negated by the audience knowledge that certain characters are usually untouchable. So we'll also take a look at how From mostly avoids falling into this particular trap. And finally, I mean, this show is a literal masterwork when it comes to the art of active questions and using them to fully engage an audience. So we're going to be taking a little look at that too.
Okay, so we have structure and more specifically how it fits into a streaming mold, the genius and simplicity of its concept, and how it maintains a constant fear of death theme for its characters. Then finally, we'll look at how the show uses active questions to hold audiences' attention.
Bang on.
Brilliant. Okay, so From was initially developed by John Griffin for YouTube Red way back in 2018.
YouTube Red, that is where Cobra Kai began life, right?
Indeed, it is Lee. Yeah. And what a show that was.
Oh man, pure childhood nostalgia in a can, dude. I mean, it's my feel-good show. If ever I coast the bottom, I put Cobra Kai on, and it never fails to put a smile on my face.
Amazing. So From then transitioned to Epics, and season one premiered on February the 20th, 2022. When Epix rebranded to MGM Plus, From became one of its flagship shows, although it has been made available on multiple other streamers such as Netflix and Amazon.
And we're going to be taking a deep dive into the first episode of season one, which is dated 2020 and titled Long Day's Journey into Night. The script was written by John Griffin and weighs in at an unsurprising 61 pages. And as you know, as always, we are looking at these texts for educational purposes only, and all rights remain with their respective creators.
So buckle up, folks, as we take a one-way trip into Fromville. Stranded in a mysterious town with no way out, strangers from all walks of life are forced to unite against nightmarish nocturnal creatures and unravel the town's sinister secrets. With no hope of rescue and the relentless horrors that stalk them in the night, the residents must adapt or fall prey to a seemingly omnipresent force that thrives solely on their suffering. Lee. So we open in a small town surrounded by thick forest. The sound of a ringing bell draws our attention to a lone figure, Sheriff Boyd Stevens. He patrols the streets, bell in hand. Boyd is played by the always fantastic Harold Perrineau. Locals hurry to their houses, not in panic, but with a definite sense of urgency.
In the script, Boyd is described as wearing a state trooper's uniform, whereas on screen, Boyd is decidedly more smart casual, I think.
Yeah. In the local diner, Sarah ushers the customers out the door before locking the door and inspecting a strange looking talisman on the wall. One of the diner's radios sparks to life, and we take a closer look at the town. Something seems off, but we can't quite place it, not yet anyway. An upturned truck lies in an empty pool next to a motel sign, but there's no motel. A young girl, Megan, plays on a rusty swing, only to be quickly ushered inside by her mother and the sheriff.
Yeah, in the script, there's no interaction with Boyd here. Instead, we get this little bit of dialogue, which perhaps too blatantly hints at the dangerous nature of the town. Check it out. Megan Pratt, 6, adorable, swings on a creaky homemade backyard swing. Lauren Pratt, late 20s, comes into the yard. Lauren, time to come in, sweetie. Megan, just 5 more minutes, please. Lauren kneels down in front of her. It's going to be dark soon. You don't want to be out here when it gets dark, do you? Megan emphatically shakes her head. All right, well, come on in then. Lauren takes her by the hand and leads her to the house.
Yeah, so I can see why they trimmed this. It basically tells us that night is bad, rather than letting us, the audience, follow the clues and find that out for themselves,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we are introduced to Deputy Kenny and the town medic Christy as they help shepherd Kenny's dementia-suffering father down to the basement. With the old man secure, the two of them share a moment of awkward but rather sweet flirtation before Kenny heads home. Christy locks up the medical facility, which looks strangely like a repurposed schoolhouse, and we see that another talisman, like the one from the diner, hangs near the door.
There's a little extra dialogue in the script, but nothing important has been cut here. The script also does a great job of summing up the awkward relationship between the two. Check this line out. There's a sweet, awkward chemistry here. They both linger at the door in the place where a goodnight kiss should be.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little line that really succinctly sums up the moment, right?
Mm.
Really nice piece of writing there. So Kenny then checks in with Sheriff Boyd, who is watching a group of people outside a three-story estate up the hill through a small pair of binoculars. This place is known as Colony House, and they confirm all is in order. There's some great unspoken characterization here. Boyd is obviously watching these people for a reason, and the subtle look on Perenau's face and the reassuring pat on the back from Kenny tells us there's more at play here than we can see. So, laying those active questions out before us there, Lee. After everyone heads inside, Boyd retires to the sheriff's station, which is clearly a repurposed post office. A tablet hangs on the door and reads Nights Without Incident 96. And inside, once again, we see a talisman hanging by the door.
Nice. In the script, Kenny and his family live above the sheriff's station, whereas, as we'll see later, they have a house of their own in the show. Now, let's take a quick second to recount some of the active questions that have already been put into play just in the first few minutes of this. So we've got what is wrong with the town? Why are the sheriff and deputy out of uniform? Where is the hotel? Why are all the cars broken down? What's with these weird talismans by everybody's door? What kind of incident have we gone over 3 months without having? Why is the sheriff station a post office? Why is the medical facility a school? And perhaps most importantly, why is everyone scared to be out after dark? Now, I'm sure there are more, but this is just off the top of my head, and it's a brilliant use of active questions to engage audience attention.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So, I mean, we've spoken before about streaming shows needing to grab their audience in the first minute or two to prevent them moving on to something else. Do you think the active questions are a good way to do this?
Absolutely. I mean, they're cheap, simple, and as effective as the audience is inquisitive.
Good. Goodly. Excellent stuff. So, into the local tavern now, a converted old gas station, which is basically a makeshift shack filled with ramshackle furniture and moonshine. Love me a bit of moonshine, Lee. The bartender tries to move a comatose Frank who lies inebriated on the floor, but he's just too far gone. Reluctantly, the bartender locks up for the night, covers the windows with a makeshift drapes, and again we see a strange talisman mounted near the door. We then cut to Frank's worried wife, Lauren, and his young daughter, Megan, who we saw playing outside earlier. They realize he's not going to be home before dark and have to lock up without him. Lauren sends Megan upstairs to say her prayers.
Yeah, this is all pretty much spot on as written in the script.
Yeah. So by now, night has fallen, and we look over the ominous, all encompassing woods surrounding the strange little town before joining young Megan at her bedside as she recites her prayers. No sooner has she finished, though, when there comes a tap at the window, Lee. So Megan tries to ignore the tapping, but a sweet voice calls out to her and tells her it's Grandma and that she should come to the window.
Yeah, in the script, it's undecipherable whispers that draw Megan to the window. It's kind of inferred that the child has been somewhat mesmerized by the voices.
Yeah. So Megan lifts the blinds to reveal a kindly old woman seemingly floating just outside the window there. The young girl states that the woman doesn't look like her grandma, just as a terrified Lauren appears and tries to talk her daughter away from the window. It's no use though. Megan unlatches the window and we catch a brief glimpse of this terrible, kind of terrifying, demonic visage as the creature outside lunges through the window at them and boomly face punch. Roll opening credits, my friend.
And yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, dude, though. I don't think this is our face punch. I think that comes just in a little bit.
Yeah, well, you're probably right. Face punch or Mars slap, though, it's one hell of an opener, isn't it?
Isn't it? It's just so well done. I mean, we get some great character beats, and the tone of the series is wonderfully established here with minimal dialogue.
Yeah, it's a really great opening for the show. As you mentioned, lots of active questions drawing us in, loads of atmosphere, and tonally it's working really well at this point. And then boom, this nice stinger before the title sequence starts. Also, is it just me or are the opening credits really, really long?
They run for around 2 minutes, so they definitely don't fly by, do they?
Yeah, I sense this will be like a skip credits button in the future episodes for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slog by the 30th time for sure.
So we get a momentary respite from the mysterious town now as we move to an RV driving through some beautiful forestry. Inside, we meet the Matthews family. Jim and his wife Tabitha are up front, while 16-year-old Julie torments her little brother Ethan with a story involving some finger puppets.
In the script, we first meet the Matthews family at a roadside motel. Julie's interaction with her brother plays out almost exactly as it does on screen, save for the fact that yeah, if they're in a motel room instead of the RV. It's also made very clear in the script that the Matthews are going through a tough time in their marriage, something that is teased out much more naturally over the course of the series. But check out this scene from the script and you'll see what I mean.
Exterior, motel parking lot, morning. Jim finishes packing up the car as Tabitha Matthews, mid-30s, walks over from the lobby. She's got a conflicted look similar to Jim's. It becomes pretty clear, pretty quick, that these two are having problems in their marriage. Jim, all set? Tabitha, yep. Jim, what do they say about the room? Tabitha, sighs. There's no manager on Sundays, so they said to call the corporate office. Jim sighs, frustrated. Jim, this is bullshit. He starts walking towards the lobby. Tabitha, where are you going? Jim, to talk to the clerk. Tabitha, annoyed. What is it you think he's going to tell you that he didn't tell me? Catches herself, changes her tone. Look, can we just get on the road? The sooner we get there, the better, right? Jim realizes he's overreacting, reins it in. Jim, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense, I think, to cut the motel. It cuts down on the need for another filming location, obviously, and having the RV already in motion adds a dynamic to the scene, like things are already in motion, you know?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's a great little action line in the script, which I think sums up sibling dynamics perfectly. Check this out. She, obviously being Julie, pats the puppets gently, taking a great deal of sadistic sisterly pleasure in Ethan's genuine panic.
That's great. It's a lovely little scene, isn't it? Yeah, nothing like a little bit of sibling sadism in the family dynamic, I think, Lee. Thankfully, Tabitha is able to calm the sensitive boy and reassure him there are no such things as monsters.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be holding on to that sentiment for very much longer.
Yeah, might rue that little bit of reassurance, methinks, a little later down the line. Anyway, back into Fromville now. Is that actually what the town is called?
Town doesn't have a name, at least not yet, but the fandom have affectionately christened it that, and I kind of dig it, so that's how I always refer to
Yeah, fair enough. Good enough for me, Lee. So back in
it.
Fromville, the sun is up, and a worse for wear Frank stumbles home from the bar to find a crowd has gathered outside his house. He doesn't put two and two together yet, and it's not until Boyd storms from the house and slaps the ever loving shit out of him for not nailing his windows shut that it dawns on him what has happened. Poor Frank, he pleads for mercy as Boyd drags him into the house.
Yeah, in the script, we get a brief scene of the town priest, Father Cartry, known as Father Kelly in the script, leaving the church before we head to Frank's house.
Yeah. On screen, though, Boyd drags Frank upstairs into Megan's bedroom, where Kenny watches over the bodies of Lauren and Megan. And dude, I mean, we may not have seen what happened to Frank's wife and daughter, but we don't miss a thing of the aftermath as Boyd rams Frank's face into the dismembered and disemboweled bodies of his family. And dude, it's pretty graphic at this point, isn't it?
Face punch.
Yeah, quite. It's pretty hard. So poor Frank is wailing on the floor as Boyd pulls his gun and almost executes him on the spot before ordering Kenny to lock him up.
Man, Perrineau is such a phenomenal actor. I mean, he balances like the rage, pain, frustration Boyd is feeling so well here.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty damn terrifying. And I would say maybe a little harsh to a man who's just brutally lost his entire family, would you say?
If you live in the town, you obey the rules, man. They're in place for a reason.
Still a bit harsh, man.
Maybe, but I mean, you've just seen what happens when people fuck up. And also, this won't become apparent until later in the series, but the whole a man protects his family line that Boyd hits Frank with is deeply tied to a recent tragedy in Boyd's life. So it all kind of, goes in swings and roundabouts. And in the script, they stress that children should be kept in the basement at night, whereas on screen, it's all about nailing shut kids' windows.
Yeah. Dude, funnily enough, when I watched it, I thought, a little bit of unresolved personal business creeping into that reaction there. It just plays that way, doesn't it? He plays
Yeah.
it so well. Anyway, Boyd passes a concerned Father Catry and picks up a discarded talisman lying on the floor. At this point, we rejoin the Matthews family on the road as they come upon a fallen tree blocking the highway.
You'll never view a fallen tree in the same way again after this show, I tell you.
Yeah. Upon examining the tree, scores of crows emerge from the woods, pretty sinister, and begin to circle overhead, causing the unnerved family to head back to the RV and turn the thing around. Now, back in town, Boyd heads up to the colony house where it's made awfully clear by the head of the house, Donna, that they have an arrangement and the sheriff isn't welcome there. Donna, incidentally, is played by the fantastic Elizabeth Saunders. Boyd eats some humble pie, and Donna allows him to visit his son. Colony House definitely gives off a strong whiff of the hippie commune vibe to me, Lee.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. It's a great introduction to Donna as well. Like we first see her literally getting her hands dirty planting crops. She's dressed for work, and her no-nonsense demeanor is made very clear. But having said that, we see that she is not unreasonable at all, as all it takes is a polite word for her to allow Boyd into the house to see his son. So, despite the differences, there's still kind of a lot of underpinning respect, I think, there as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, more character introductions as we are introduced to Boyd's estranged son Ellis and his girlfriend Fatima. The two are obviously very much in love, and after a brief exchange between father and son, it becomes very clear that there's a sizable rift between the two men. Back with the Matthews in the RV as the road leads them into a very familiar looking town. Ethan ponders why all of the cars have flat tires as they park up across the street from a funeral service being held for Lauren and Megan. The townsfolk all turn to eyeball the newcomers, and Boyd sums up the situation in a single word.
Shit.
Shit, indeed, Lee. I have a feeling things are going to go from bad to worse for the Matthews family.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a safe bet. And there's a cool scene between Father Cutry and Kenny that didn't make it to the screen. Check it out.
Interior, church, back room, late afternoon. Father Kelly sits at a table deep in thought, a sheet of blank notebook paper laid out before him, beside a stack of paper filled with writing, an old fashioned quill in his hand, and a pot of ink on the table. His lips are moving, trying to remember something, a phrasing. His eyes open. He's got it. He begins to write. A knock at the open doorway. Deputy Kenny comes in. Kenny, Father Kelly, Sheriff told me to let you know they're ready. Father Kelly, thank you, Kenny. Kenny, read the parchment. How's it coming? Father Kelly smiles, line by line and page by page. Kenny, it's pretty crazy you can remember the whole thing like that. I mean, word for word. That's impressive. Father Kelly smiles and finishes the passage he's writing, puts down the quill. Kenny is lingering. Kenny continued. Can I ask you something, Father? Father Kelly, of course. Kenny, you think we're being punished? I mean, you think that's why we're here? Father Kelly sits on the edge of the table, contemplates the question. Father Kelly, I did at first. When I first came here, I thought things, felt things that would have been unimaginable to me before. Kenny, what changed? Father Kelly smiles. I found my faith. Kenny, you weren't a priest before? Father Kelly, oh no, I was. I said the words and I read the scriptures. I had a lovely congregation and took great joy in bringing the Lord into their hearts and lives. I thought I knew what faith really was. But here, to know that God has a plan, no matter how impossible it may be to understand, to find peace in that truth, even on a day like today, now I understand what faith truly means. And for that, Kenny, strange as it may seem, I'm grateful. Smiles. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Kenny, which part is that? Father Kelly holds up the piece of parchment he'd just been writing on. Father Kelly, Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5. Hot off the presses. Puts a reassuring hand on Kenny's shoulder. Let's not keep everybody waiting, huh? Kenny nods. So So that's a cool scene, man. I mean, I love the fact that Katri is rewriting the Bible from memory. That speaks volumes, no pun intended, about his character, right?
Absolutely. In the script, there's another brief scene where Jim exits the RV and enters the diner, which is empty save for a panicked Sarah who flees at the sight of him.
Yeah, so Jim exits the RV to ask the funeral goers for directions. Before he reaches the crowd, though, Boyd tells everyone quietly to leave the newcomers be and to remember how it was like for them when they first arrived in town. Jim and the sheriff share a brief, awkward exchange. Boyd tells him just to keep on driving straight for the highway and he'll see.
Hmm. Great little moment here. In the script, we lose a brief dialogue from Kenny's parents, but otherwise things are pretty much the same. And again, I know I've sung his praises before, but just the heartbreak in Boyd's eyes when he notes that Jim has a family with him and young children. I mean, it's subtle, but it's just so masterfully played by Perrineau. He's so good in this.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. So the Matthews family hit the road once more, and Julie takes the opportunity to once again torment her little brother with ominous talk of a murder of crows looking for their next victim.
Yeah, this dialogue happens slightly earlier in the script while Jim is talking to Boyd, but otherwise it's pretty close to what's on the page.
Now, things take a strange turn as the RV rounds a bend, only for the family to find themselves back in town. Jim stops to ask Sarah for directions, but the creepy young woman just gives him a sympathetic look and walks away. As the RV leaves town again, Sarah meets up with her brother, Nathan, and they briefly discuss the newcomers. And Sarah drops this wonderfully telling line. It's the part where you still expect to find the road that takes you home. That's the part that's cruel.
Yeah, in the script, this dialogue actually occurs between Ellis and Fatima, but the core of the dialogue remains the same.
Yeah, so why the change of speaker, do you think, Lee?
Not sure on this one, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's because Sarah plays a much bigger role in the first episode than Ellis and Fatima. It keeps us out of Colony House, so that when we first start to learn about it through the Matthews perspective later, it kind of feels like we're right there with them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, also in terms of flow, I think it just keeps us on the road with the RV heading off into the distance, you know? So, yeah, yeah. So back in the RV, and tension is rising once again as the Matthews find themselves back in the same town. In a bid to course correct, Jim pulls a U-turn and heads back the way they came. Boyd ominously tells Kenny to get the strip.
At this point in the script, we get a exposition heavy scene featuring Father Kelly, Stroke Hatchery, and Boyd. So check it out.
Interior, Boyd's office, sheriff's station, day. Boyd sits turning the lamp on his desk on and off, on and off. A knock at the door. He looks up to see Father Kelly standing in the doorway. Father Kelly, thought I'd see how you're holding up. Boyd stares at the lamp. Boyd, where do you think it comes from? The electricity, the water. You think it's magic? Father Kelly takes a seat across the desk. Father Kelly, I've always found electricity to be one of the more common forms of magic we take for granted in the world. Boyd, grim smile. At least you didn't say it was God lending us a helping hand. Father Kelly, I also didn't say it wasn't. Boyd shakes his head, goes to the map. As he speaks, he points to the different direction spots marked on the map. Boyd, that car had Washington plates on it, which means they probably came off a highway somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. When Kenny and his dad got here, they detoured off a road in San Antonio. Christy was in Michigan. Nathan and Sarah were on the eastern tip of Long Island. I can point to every single entry point for every single person in this town. You know what I can't show you? I can't show you, spreads his arms, this, anywhere. Father Kelly, what's your point, Boyd? Boyd, I heard about your talk with Kenny. Said you told him this place taught you what faith really means. Father Kelly, that's right. Boyd, so you tell me something. And I don't want any of the bullshit you talked about in the cemetery. You tell me, what is it about this place, about the things that we've seen, could make you possibly think there's still someone up there looking out for us? Father Kelly, you really want the answer? Off Boyd's look. Because of you. Boyd bursts out laughing. He laughs so hard it brings tears to his eyes. Father Kelly continued, I realize how that may sound. Boyd, you really don't. Father Kelly, before you came here, I buried more people in a week than you've seen die in the last 2 years. And there were no ceremonies then, no tears, because people had given up on everything but trying to survive the next night. You came here and you created order from chaos. You found the talismans in the forest. You made it possible for people to protect themselves and live again, not just survive. I believe that you're the one who will find a way out. You will get these people home. That's why God brought you here. That's what gives me faith. Boyd stares at the lamp, shakes his head. Boyd, a giant tree in the middle of the road brought me here, same as you. And if God had something to do with that, he's a bigger son of a bitch than I thought. Looks at the map. I've seen things in that forest you wouldn't believe. God didn't bring me here, because I don't think it's a place God remembers. I think it's a nightmare that got stuck in the world. And now that poor bastard in the minivan just drove his family straight into it. They sit in silence, the words hanging in the air. So why do you think this ultimately was Cutley?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I think it just forces way too much exposition down our throats in one go, as well as blatantly christening Boyd as the savior of the town, you know?
Yeah, you don't think he is? I mean, he's arguably the main character, right?
Yeah, I mean, do you follow wrestling at all?
Not since growing up, Lee. No.
Ow, microaggression. Okay, so there's a wrestler called Roman Reigns, right? And some years ago, the powers that be decided to push him to the moon and make him their number one guy. And predictably, the majority of fans just turned on the poor dude and would boo the crap out of him every time he set foot in the ring. And the more they jeered, the more corporate would push to get the guy over. And the more fans were told that they should love this guy, the more they hated him, you know?
Okay, so I'm still not seeing the relevance here, though, Lee.
Okay, bear with me. I do have an angle. So eventually, Reigns takes a sabbatical due to illness, and when he returns, he turns heel, goes, bad guy, drops all the shield that he'd been forcing down fans' throats, and develops a much rawer, more natural character. And the fans love it. He rockets to the top spot and becomes one of the most successful wrestlers of all time. The lesson being that the more people are told to root and cheer for someone, the more they're told to do it, the more likely they are to reject them. It's human nature. But if you let that character develop naturally, if you watch them earn their stripes, then you are far more inclined to have their backs in the future.
Okay, so you think the writer is using a kind of show don't tell to manufacture audience preference here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. Yeah, I mean, imagine if Return of the Jedi was the first Star Wars movie. I mean, do you think fans would have embraced Luke Skywalker so much if they hadn't been with him through his highs and lows as he struggled to become a Jedi, lose his aunt and uncle, etc.?
Yeah, okay. I get where you come. I do think Star Wars had a much more clearly defined kind of good guy, bad guy dynamic than From. But hey, it fills our weekly off on a tangent quota.
That it does, my friend, that it does.
Okay, well, back on the screen, and the Matthews, now heading in the opposite direction, spot another vehicle heading towards them. But their elation quickly turns to terror when they are accidentally driven off the road by a seemingly inebriated motorist.
It is definitely not their day today, is it?
No, they're having a really bad day. And it is one hell of a crash as the RV is flipped on its side and a massive branch punctures the windshield and pins Jim to the driver's seat. He seems relatively unhurt, though, as does Julie, but Tabitha isn't moving, and poor little Ethan is impaled through the leg. Oh, looks painfully. Toby, the driver of the other car, emerges a little banged up and seemingly intoxicated before staggering off up the road.
In the script, the other vehicle also hits a tree and the driver is killed by an impaling branch through the throat. It's also inferred in the script that Jim wasn't paying attention to the road, whereas on screen it's made pretty clear that the other vehicle is primarily to blame for the crash.
Yeah. Now, back in town, Boyd and Kenny lay a tire buster spike strip across the road just as Toby reaches them. He tells them about the accident, and Kenny stresses that there are only 2 hours of daylight left. Boyd orders Kenny to get Toby to the medical facility and then meet him up the road with help. Kenny drops off Toby, and then he and Christy stock up on supplies before heading out to the crash site. Speaking of which, back in the other car, a dazed man, Jade, emerges from the back seat. Unusual name for a fella there, Lee, no?
Interestingly, in the script, Jade is actually an 18-year-old female, and we first meet her next to the corpse of another girl who was ejected through the windscreen in the car crash.
Yeesh. Yeah, explains the name, I guess. Boyd arrives on the scene and quickly realizes Jade is tripping balls, so to speak. And in order to keep him from wandering off, he handcuffs him to the car before heading down to the RV. Now, down in the RV, Boyd climbs inside and checks Tabitha's pulse, and to Jim's immense relief, she's okay. The same can't be said for Ethan, though, and Boyd's face paints a pretty grim picture as he surveys the situation. Back in town, we catch up with Ellis, laying flowers on Lauren and Megan's graves. Father Cattry pulls up in an old pickup with Kenny and Christy and asks the young man for help. Despite his obvious reservations towards his father, Ellis steps up and hops in the truck.
Yeah, nice, simple character beat there. Shows us that perhaps the relationship between the two isn't as broken as we first led to believe. Plus, the fact we find Ellis at the gravesite shows us that he's a compassionate young man. He feels the loss of Lauren and Megan as keenly as the rest of the town. He just kind of shows it in his own way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now, back in the medical facility, Nurse Gina fixes Toby up with a makeshift IV before escorting Kenny's father back down to the basement. Back at the crash site, Christy checks on Jade while Boyd helps Julie from the RV. We then head back to the clinic where a creepy Sarah is tending to Toby, reassuring him that he is safe.
Yeah, he totally isn't.
Psycho. She's a psycho, Lee. Back at the crash site, Ellis and Kenny have extracted Tabitha from the wrecked RV, and she shares an emotional moment with Julie. Boyd and Christy discuss Ethan, and it's not sounding good. The boy is stable for now, but she needs at least an hour to safely remove the broken table from his leg. And as Kenny is quick to point out, there's only 40 minutes of daylight left. Boyd has a flash of inspiration and pulls the talisman from his pocket. He asks if Christy can fix the kid inside the RV. Kenny is rightfully concerned and asks if it'll work, which Boyd states honestly, fairly honestly here, Lee, that he doesn't know. Christy takes a moment and then says that it will work before heading back to the RV.
Yeah, it's a brilliant little moment of subtext here. I mean, on screen, when Boyd says he doesn't know and he's looking at Christy, what he's basically doing is asking her if she is willing to risk her life with him to save the boy without actually pressuring her into saying yes. And, it's a testament to her character that she pretty quickly agrees.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little moment. Now, back in the upturned RV, Christy starts to work on stabilizing Ethan while Jim heads outside to speak to Tabitha before Boyd convinces him to send the girls back to town. Back in town, creepy Sarah plants a kiss on a bewildered Toby before reassuring him that this isn't his fault and then stabs the poor guy in the throat. I mean, what the hell, Lee?
Yeah, creepy Sarah definitely living up to the creepy moniker right now.
Oh, damn straight. I mean, what the hell? Back at the RV, Ellis and Boyd share an awkward yet tender moment while Jim persuades his wife to leave for town. There's a moment where she accidentally calls Ethan Thomas, which seems to upset her even more here.
Yeah, that's a nice little hint at what's caused some of the issues in their relationship and a plot point that will be explored in much greater detail later in the series.
Awesome. So before reluctantly leaving, Tabitha tells Jim that she doesn't trust these people and that there is something weird about the whole situation. I mean, no shit.
Oh shit. Yeah, and it's a really good point she brings up here though. I mean, obviously as an audience, we've had some insight into the goings on in the town and we know a little bit about how dangerous the town is. For the Matthews family, however, this is rightfully something straight out of a horror movie, the never-ending road, the creepy townsfolk who just stare at them from windows and don't say anything. So from their point of view, this is like infinitely even more terrifying.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so back in the RV, Boyd sets about securing the entrances while Christy and Jim work on removing the impaled leg from the broken table. The pickup, meanwhile, races for town, but uh-oh, in the panic, nobody remembers about the spike strip and all the tires are blown out, Lee, leaving the battered occupants no choice but to run for the colony house.
Yeah, there's a nice little reminder of the apparent friction between the town and Colony House as Kenny asks if they will even open the door for
Yeah, so what is this about between the two places? Why the hostility?
them. Well, stick a pin in that and we'll come back to it.
Righty ho. Well, back at the RV, and Ethan is struck down with a violent seizure just as a horrific screech echoes from the woods. Boyd peeks out of the window to see sinister shapes emerging from the darkness. They look like people, but somehow wrong, be it their antiquated dress or their slow, measured gait, all unnerving as hell to witness. Boyd then simply states, "They're coming." And boom, Lee, credits roll.
Nice. So come on then, bud. What did you think?
Well, I thought this was really engaging, man. I mean, I thought it was a really good opening episode. Lots of active questions, as you say, to draw us in and keep us interested. Lots of lovely character beats setting up future drama and conflict. I thought the pilot really established the tone of the show fantastically well. It's really atmospheric. Love the exposition. I thought it was kind of restrained and well delivered. And as we mentioned before, I mean, just a banger of a concept, man. I mean, what about you? What do you think?
Oh man, I mean, I'm all in on this show. So as usual, I am far from the most impartial reviewer, but I just thought it was fantastic. You know, it's just the simplicity of the concept, the talent of the cast, the tone, everything just gels into like a near perfect organism. You know, I think you really get a sense that these people have been stuck here for a significant amount of time. And as you find out later, you know, things used to be a lot worse for people. Before Boyd found the talismans, the townsfolk used to have to hide every night, and the body count was so much higher back then than it is
Mm,
now.
yeah. Okay, dude. Well, it's that time. Let's break this baby down.
Oh, yeah.
So, as always, we'll begin the breakdown with a retrospective look at our reasons for choosing the project. So, first off, structure. How does this compare to the syndicated TV shows of oldly?
Well, first off, obviously there are no ad breaks, and with that omission, the need to have a mini climax and resolution to retain audience attention through any commercials is gone. So instead, and we've spoken on this before, I believe, the focus is on grabbing the audience's attention as quickly as possible. The first 3 minutes, you know, hell, the first 30 seconds are absolutely crucial in snatching the limited attention span of the modern TikTok generation and holding it.
It does open strong, doesn't it? For sure. Okay, Lee. So, despite the lack of ad breaks, does it still maintain a classic four-act structure of sorts?
Well, let's take a look. I mean, including titles and end credits, the episode runs for around about 52 and a half minutes. So we'll round down to 50 minutes for simplicity's sake. And that would put each act at around 12 and a half minutes in duration. So why don't we look around those timestamps and we'll see what we have. So at around the 13 and a half minute mark, we have our face punch of the family massacre that holds to the classic structure quite well, I think. Then, around about the 25-minute mark, Matthew's family have just left town for the first time, which is after their tense arrival scene and before the crash. Both, I think, would have served as better act breaks, I feel. And then at 37:50, we have the townsfolk arriving at the crash scene.
So, it's a loose fit for the old mold, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it could easily be reshuffled slightly to fit that structure if it had to, you know?
Yeah. So, with regard to the script, I know we have a few extra scenes in there. Does that affect the show's structure on the page at all?
Well, interestingly, minus the cover page, the script is exactly 60 pages. So at about the 15 to 16-minute mark, we have that face punch scene. Page 30 of the script is when the Matthews family arrive in town. And page 45, 46 of the script have the townsfolk picking Ellis up to head for the crash site.
Yeah, so it pretty neatly fits into something like a four-act structure on the page and on the screen, despite not having the ad breaks we would normally associate with a show of this ilk. If it were being shown on sort of a non-streaming context. Yeah, so that's good. Quick question, Lee. Do you think adhering to this structure, despite the lack of explicit need to, is to cater for an audience familiarity with the structure?
Quite possibly. I mean, I think that old Hollywood saying comes into play here a little, give me the same but different.
Yeah. And do you think the writers have maybe missed an opportunity here in being freed from the ad break model, but still kind of adhering to it structurally?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's a tried and tested structure that has endured for decades, in which ultimately does make for a well-paced episode of TV. I think this is slowly changing now due to habits in binge watching. I wonder how an entire season would break down if you looked at it as a whole. But I think that's an experiment for another day, I feel.
Yeah. And lastly, last question, Lee, do you think by choosing to stick with this structure, there is something to be said for how one crafts the ebb and flow of an hour-long show? Meaning this structure keeps audiences engaged better than something less familiarly formulaic, I guess.
I think as the next generation is raised up purely on streaming content, that the structures we all know and familiarize ourselves with will gradually change and evolve to suit audiences' tastes. I mean, for better or for worse, Netflix has changed the way we consume media forever.
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. So let's dig into the concept a little and how the show maintains its constant fear of death theme over an extended time period.
Okay. So first off, as I've mentioned 100 times already, concept is fantastic. It just ticks every box. It's so good.
Yeah. So tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, for starters, it's simple. You wind up in a place you can't escape, and every night monsters come from the woods and try and kill you.
Yeah, it can't get much simpler than that, can it?
Ah, yeah, but therein lies the genius, you see. So first and foremost, you rarely, if ever, need to build new sets. And the monsters, for the most part, look like regular people. So already you're saving a shit ton of money. You don't need a lot of special effects, monster makeup. But the best part is, should the story ever need a kick or things become repetitive, you could just drive some new people into the town and boom, you've injected the show's dynamic with adrenaline. One of the main draws of the show isn't so much the situation these people find themselves in, it's how they are reacting to this situation. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, off the top of my head, imagine if a prison bus rolled into town with a bunch of convicts on board, or a serial killer, or hell, a school bus. There's so much scope for storytelling that can be engineered from such a simple yet effective concept like this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The concept is brilliant, isn't it? It's just awesome. But how does the show, do you think, maintain the fear factor when some characters, like Boyd, for example, I mean, they're obviously plot armored.
Well, before I go into that, maybe you should explain the term for anyone not familiar with it.
Okay, a good idea. So basically, plot armor is basically when a character becomes somewhat unkillable due to their importance to or in the plot, i.e., the story needs them to continue. So any astute viewer knows that they will survive any situation, no matter how unwinnable it may seem. Another kind of plot armor can be in the form of popularity. So a show is unlikely to kill one of its most popular characters for fear of losing a sizable chunk of its audience. So some examples of this, I guess, would be most superhero movie protagonists. Certainly people like Tyrion Lannister, Daryl Dixon, of course, and dude, of course, the classic James Bond.
Don't forget Godzilla.
Oh, how could I forget Godzilla?
Tangent incoming. But Godzilla has a list of on-screen protections that would put The Rock to shame.
Well, look, I know how much you love the big G, Lee, so I'm going to indulge you a little bit on this one. So and let you elaborate on that.
Oh man, I've wanted to talk about Godzilla for such a long time. Okay, so Godzilla, as licensed by Toho, has a long list of requirements that must be fulfilled in any appearance, such as he cannot permanently be defeated, he cannot appear cowardly or weak, yeah, he can never eat humans, for example, just to name a few.
Hmm. I'm sure I've seen Godzilla eat people, dude. What about the 1998 American version?
Oh, speak not of that blasphemous work. That was not Godzilla, as confirmed by later Toho movies, but a mutated iguana known as Zilla.
Really?
Yep, 100%. Zilla even makes an appearance in Godzilla Final Wars, where he is unceremoniously one-shotted by the one true king of the monsters. As for the eating point, yeah, he may have picked people up in his mouth and yeeted them at one point, but that would be the extent of it.
Hmm. Okay, I'll take your word for it, Lee. I mean, actually, to be honest, it does remind me a little bit of my reaction to Zack Snyder's Batman, you know? I mean, my Batman doesn't kill people. You know what I'm saying, Lee? But let's get back onto the topic at hand, Lee. And that is how the show maintains its fear factor in spite of seemingly unkillable characters.
Nice. Quick side note, Batman would be so much more effective at his night job if he actually did kill people. But again, that is a discussion for another day. Okay, so From maintains a constant fear factor in a few ways. First of all, in its memorable cast of lovable side characters, from people like Kenny's mom to Father Cottrey, there are many characters which, while not crucial to the plot, are still very much killable. And the show, believe me, is not shy about killing people off, I promise you. Secondly, we fear for our seemingly unkillable characters in different ways. We're fairly sure that they aren't going to die anytime soon, but we worry that they may lose their loved ones. And when they do, we feel that loss right there with them. In Boyd's case, this is especially true as the creatures that stalk the night have openly told him to his face that they won't kill him until they break him first, something they attempt regularly, with often tragic repercussions for the people Boyd is closest to. And another clever thing the show does after a while is make us familiar with the monsters. And by that, I mean they use the same actors, so they aren't just faceless creatures in the night. One particular creature the fandom has christened Smiley is particularly terrifying and has turned into a real fan favorite character.
Yeah, so I remember you kind of talking about that in the Descent episode, right, with the Scar character.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of adds personality to what may otherwise just be a faceless horde of villains.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, but I mean, this I feel Lee is more of a season arc thing rather than a pilot episode thing. But by putting the armored characters' loved ones in danger, we experience the fear and reality of losing them through our beloved characters' eyes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've all lost people, that we love, and we all know people who have, we love people who have lost people that they love, and it's painful for us to see them suffer like that, which is something the show does very well.
Absolutely. Yep. Alrighty then. So on to our last talking point, active questions, which for those not familiar with the term are questions which the writer actively seeks to implant in the viewer's mind. So if this is done well, an audience will then be compelled to stick around to learn the answers, as well as actively trying to figure it out for themselves. So we listed a few of these questions, but I think the core of the show revolves around these. So number one, how did the inhabitants get to the town? Number two, what is the town? Number three, will they escape? And if so, how? And number four, what are the monsters? So, no spoilers, but do we ever get answers to any of these questions?
As of the end of season three, somewhat. I mean, there are no concrete explanations for anything as yet, but the nature of the town and the monsters and how they're kind of entwined together is slowly being revealed. And the show's creators insist that they have a solid story in place and are not making things up as they go.
Well, that's always a relief to hear. Lost. Okay.
My thoughts exactly.
So let's look at our characters. Are there any introductions that stood out to you as particularly effective or memorable?
Yeah, I think for me, it's our first look at the monsters, i.e., the old lady in the window. I mean, check it out. This is how she's described. A kind-looking old woman staring in the window. Her clothes and hair are matted, filthy, covered in dirt. Her lips are smiling, but her eyes seem vacant. How about you?
Well, I really enjoyed Boyd's introduction. Although it's not exactly what appears on the screen, I think it does a good job of introducing this character. So, Boyd's intro in the script goes like this: Sheriff Boyd Stevens, 52, grizzled, tough as nails, walks down one of the quiet, empty streets, his eyes scanning the homes around him. His uniform is well kept, though a bit frayed and worn. It looks like more of a state trooper's uniform than that of a small town sheriff. The wind begins to howl. Boyd stops, refusing the urge to quicken his pace. He takes a deep breath, checks the sun hanging low in the sky. He continues down the street. Well, I love that. I thought that was a good introduction.
Yeah, it's
Before
cool.
we break down the scarology, did you have a scariest moment, Lee?
For me, it's definitely our face punch moment of the carnage in Megan's bedroom. Obviously we know something bad has happened, but when it's slapped on screen in all its brutal, brutal glory, it is like a punch in the face. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, for me it was the granny at the window, I think, Lee. So there was something wasn't the image of the granny was kind of scary, but there's something about the build up to that
Mm,
reveal that I thought was
yeah.
quite sinister,
Mm,
which I kind of enjoyed that moment. I think it's the girl in peril that kind of you're like,
yeah.
oh God, this poor girl's gonna get it. I know it. Okay, man. So let's talk about the scarology. So first of all, yes or no answer. Does this episode more or less conform to the 10-minute rule?
No, but to be fair, I wasn't really expecting it to. I mean, this is TV after all, and an entirely different kettle of fish from what we're used to looking at.
Yeah, fair enough. But let's do our best to break it down.
Okay, so our first real scare is the old lady at Megan's window, which kicks off at around 7 minutes and 10 seconds. Then we have the face punch of the massacre reveal at 13 minutes and 20 seconds. This is followed by the crows at the tree at 16 minutes 30 seconds. It could be considered a scare, but to me, it's more unnerving than scary, so I'm not sure if it should be included in the scarology or not.
Yeah, I think to be included within the scarology, this has to be something which is kind of legit scary.
Yeah, fair play. Okay, so then we have the crash, which occurs at the 30-minute mark. And then Sarah murdering poor Toby at 45 and a half minutes. And then finally, we have the creatures emerging from the woods at the 51-minute mark.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's break down the episode acts for you. So, if we're breaking this down in a classic four-act structure, that would put two scares in Act One, those being the old lady at the window and the massacre reveal. They are placed at 6 minutes and 10 seconds apart, but 2 minutes of that are opening titles. So, in reality, they'd hit a lot closer together. In the third act, we get the car crash at 30 minutes, more than 10 minutes since the last scare. Then in Act 4, we have Toby's murder at 45 minutes, 30 seconds, and the creatures emerging from the woods at 51 minutes.
Fantastic. So, do you have any thoughts on the themes at work here?
Yeah, so fear of death, I think fear of the unknown are pretty prevalent. I think there's something about people being kind of locked in some way or trapped in some way. So that could be, maybe about trauma or possibly regret or by mistake, something that they've done.
Hmm.
But I'd have to see the rest of the series really and see how that develops to be really sure
Hmm.
about that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, fear of death, fear of the unknown, desire for order, I think, especially from our point of view characters, Boyd and the Matthews family. On a wider scope, though, I think the show is something of an analogy for tragedy. You know, something happens, something unexpected. You know, you find yourself in the town, and in that instant, your life is changed forever. You know, you try your best to find some order, adapt to the new status quo, but that darkness is always waiting out there to consume you. You know, I mean, best of all, the outside world just keeps on ticking, completely unaware of you and your problems. It's no coincidence, I think, like you kind of alluded to earlier, that many of the people who find themselves in the town are struggling with grief or trauma, either before or shortly after their arrival in town.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, the town just make for a great metaphor, right? Whatever the kind of the theme is, or whatever, it just makes such a great metaphor, that town and that concept. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, what do you think, if anything, you learned from the Scriptly?
Simplicity, man. I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking in the way this script is written. Don't get me wrong, it's an excellent script. But again, I'm going to flog that dead horse. The concept is everything. And if you nail that off the bat, it's going to make everything that comes afterwards so much easier. You know, how about you?
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, for me, it was interesting, the differences between the script and the episode. So, I'm sure there was loads of development between the script that I read and the final shooting script, but I thought the episode delivered the exposition in a much more satisfying way. I thought some of the dialogue in the script was a touch kind of monologue-y, a tad on the nose, maybe. Um, and just trying, I think, to be more subtle with that was the takeaway for me. And having an awareness that if something is made, it will be interpreted by actors and costume and lighting and all of that sort of stuff. So much more of the story and exposition can be told in other ways. So just kind of trying to be aware of that, I think,
Yeah.
was the big takeaway for me. So we spoke earlier about the tensions between the town and the colony house. So without going into any major spoilers, can you kind of elaborate on that for us, Little?
Yeah, sure. So basically, when you arrive in Fromville, you're given a choice. You can live in town and abide by the sheriff's laws, or you can live in colony house, which is kind of like a commune where people share everything and just live day to day. So if you want to lose yourself in drink, drugs, sex, you live in colony house. But if you want to strive for a normal life, you go for the town.
So Colony House is like a drug-fueled bang shack.
Yes and no. I mean, I'm not really doing it justice. It's a lot more lenient on the rules there, but the occupants, they do care about one another. It's just far more lax on anything resembling structure and rules. I think Colony House is for people that want to forget their old lives, and the town is more for the people that cling to them,
Yeah. Okay, man, which would you choose?
Town, definitely. I mean, living in a house with that many people would be a fate worse than dismemberment for me. Plus, I'd have to rely on someone in Colony House not fucking up and letting the monsters in, which, spoiler, totally happens. At least in a house on my own, I'd be solely responsible for my own safety, which, I'd much prefer it like that.
Yeah. Well, drug-fueled bang shack for me, Lee. Okay. So, well, I think that was a joke. I think we're almost done here.
Hmm.
Before we wrap up and talk about our next episode, what would you rate the script and the episode as here?
Okay, I'm going to give the episode a 9 because I hands down think it's one of the best openers of a TV series ever. The script I'm going to give a solid 7. It's solid, but as you said, it does trip over its own exposition from time to time.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed the episode, I think, more than I did the script. So I gave the script an annoying 6.5, and I gave the episode an 8.
And you really do love those bloody fractals, don't
I
you?
do. I've got to give that point 0.5, Lee.
Okay, so that gives us a total of 17 for the episode and 13.5 for the script.
Yes, good stuff.
I think
Okay,
that's
Lee, so
pretty
what's on the
reasonable.
agenda for next time?
Next time, we're going to be looking at the phenomenal 2008 cult hit, The Ruins, based off of the novel by the same name. Fantastic film, fantastic book. I highly recommend people check them out if you haven't seen them already.
Okay, and dude, I was not aware of this at all. So this will be interesting viewing, I think, for me. Okay, well, that about wraps it up, Lee. So, to everyone out there in Podcastville, if you enjoyed the show, please hit like and subscribe and check out our socials. But until next time, do take care.
Okay, Sarah, and keep writing those scares.